You're asking would I refer Thundercat on a wedding gig?
Right. Yeah, I guess so. Like, and like, why would you or why wouldn't you? So was it a trumpet player who like got you into music, or was it music and then trumpet?
Whoa, are you interviewing me right now?
It's pretty nice.
Was it a trumpet player that got me into music?
Or were you into music already and then trumpet happened? Like, which happened first, like music or trumpet?
I started piano when I was 4, and then it wasn't until I picked up the trumpet when I was like 11 that I actually felt passionately about it.
Found your voice.
Yeah, hanging out with like other 10 and 11-year-olds my age, and everyone's just squawking and making noise, and
it's beautiful.
Yeah, and going home and having something to show off for your practice the next day.
Like the reward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Learning the Godfather theme or like whatever, what other little songs and stuff. Then I had super competition. If you know Jake Baldwin, who lives in Minnesota, he started trumpet with me in 6th grade in this little school in Florence, Oregon, like 9,000 people in the town. We started together and we were just like nipping at each other's heels.
You had a nemesis.
He was my nemesis. He was.
It's super healthy if you have a good relationship with it.
Yeah, it was a healthy nemesis for sure.
That's awesome.
We went out to concerts together. We shared mac and cheese together. Hung at each other's house now and then. But yeah, and then he left in 7th grade, and then we ended up both going to NEC, and we were
the same year.
Yeah, same year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And then we were roommates for like 4 years, just about.
Damn.
So it was just this huge departure. We both developed our own styles and everything, and then kind of came back together.
It was like your first colleague, though.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you does that sort of frame a lot of your other relationships? Like, when you meet somebody new, do you that's the bar that you hold them to? Like, I feel like that's such a privilege to have a good relationship like that early on.
Yeah,
with somebody who's like organic, not like, oh, my older brother, or like my parent is a musician, or this is my teacher and like I follow them wherever they show me. You got to like from a very early point have like a barometer of like, okay, like this is where I'm at, and I can frame that with like, this is where somebody who's on equal footing is at, and like try to either push further or be like, okay, I'm doing things right too, like, oh cool, like this is somebody who I look to as like, okay, like I know how to do that, he knows how to do that, like, or like, oh hey, like I can do something he can't do, like that's cool, because when you're doing it by yourself, you have no way of really knowing like where you're at. Exactly.
And that's what the turnoff of piano was.
So solitary.
Yeah, it's so solitary, and I'm not getting this like feedback or reward of being able to like perform every rehearsal, except from your teacher. And my teacher, like, she was great. Her name is Judy Wales. Great teacher. Learned a lot from her. Learned a lot about music. Prepared me to just hit the fast track as soon as I picked up trumpet, and didn't have to learn about all these other musical things at the same time. But wasn't getting that same feedback that I was from, the band teacher and a group of...
Or the section, too.
The section, yeah. Just like this teamwork aspect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Music isn't a sport, but, we can certainly take things from sports and apply them to music.
They share a lot of the good stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the how to work well with others, how to work hard, how to cross a finish line. You see it with people's records. Like, there's some people who are just innately really good at finishing projects, and then you work with some other people, or not even work, but just like you see sometimes it can be really hard to complete something, to like call it done, to like finish, you know. I think sports can teach you that.
Yeah, it's like a relay race, especially when it comes to big ideas and trying to create big ideas with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Making an album, or just saying, like when we were talking a month ago and I was like, hey, I've been thinking like we should put a band together, we should just bring in like a tune, everybody brings in a tune, we rehearse it in the studio, and then we just do a take and just get it on video. And some people are these like master genius generals that want to like need to command every aspect of the creative process. But most of us are we have a fragment of an idea, and it's cool to like trust people with a high skill level and a creative mind to help push it along.
Yeah, I think there is a ton of value in knowing every facet of the operation as the leader, talking about being in like a leadership position, or like the point person, producer, conductor, whatever you want to call it. You know, I think the most effective conductors in an orchestra, for example, are ones that at least have experience. Like, oh, I understand what the reeds are going through. Like, there's an empathy that you get for the player, where it's like, I brass, like, I know that you can't take a breath there. And that acknowledgement, like, I think makes for like a safer music making environment, where it's like, oh wow, like this person like recognizes and understands that like the particular challenges of what I'm doing, and then I have a partner in solving that problem, versus like somebody being like, hey, like I need those to be connected, and you're like, okay, like, oh, I need to breathe somewhere, and it's frustrating when like the person who's in charge doesn't understand the task that they're delegating. Like that can be a source of friction. So
absolutely.
So like, it's like delicate, because like I think it's really hard to have it all figured out.
It is.
And you need help.
Yeah.
You know, in big ways and small ways. Like, yes, we all know how to record ourselves, but it's great working with an amazing engineer.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that like we'd probably make a better record. But like, yeah, I know how to record myself and record other people, make it sound pretty good. Just like I work with guitar players who play some bass. But
sure.
like you want me playing bass. You know what I mean? Like you don't want me engineering. And there's like, you know, where is that point where you say like, I'm going to trust somebody else to do this, but also give them the guidance to like empower them.
Trust somebody to just do the job that you want to get done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, you know, not just being like, hey, play this, or hey, record this, or hey, do this, but like, let's work together based on what I know and what you know and what we all know how to do. And like, you know, and then you're doing that thing where you're kind of pushing people to like be the best version of themselves. And like, those are the best leaders, and those are the people who get the best shit done.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Leadership can't just be trying to pull the trigger and bossing people around and being the person with the biggest ideas. You need
the loudest voice, right? It's not pointing fingers and writing checks.
No, those are the worst. Those are the worst people.
It's like,
I don't like working with.
It's effective enough where people get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how much money you're throwing at a thing. But you're gonna be. It's kind of like if you're Putin leading the army and you're just throwing young men at the battlefield in the hundreds of thousands, you'll achieve something. But if you're an effective leader and you make people passionate about what you're doing and you're allowing them space to have some artistic merit or play a role in this thing that you find important, it's gonna carry you farther.
Yeah, the abstract thinking will over time win over the conventional wisdom. I think the longer you go, you start to see like, okay, you can only do things the same way for so long before something better. It's almost like nature. Like evolution is inevitable. It happens, and our creativity, our ideas, our paths as artists work the same way. Where like eventually the better thing, the art that's more powerful, that speaks to people more, that's more sincere, will win inevitably. And you're either searching for the deeper level, you're searching for, you know, something more musical or whatever it might be, and you find it, or somebody else does. Or you don't. And you know, I think that's a part that like it gets harder the better you get at it. It's like, damn, like how do I play better than this? How do I, you know, like whether it's your range or whatever, it's like, you know, the higher the ceiling, the harder it is to push through.
Yeah, you got to find other angles of hitting it to find something to push through.
I mean, dude, Miles was so fucking radical. Like every few years, just reinventing new personnel. Like
he was radical.
Can you imagine firing Bill Evans? Right? But it's like, well, Herbie Hancock. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. I mean,
you never get Herbie Hancock if you don't fire Bill Evans.
Yeah. And Bill Evans had some room to experiment.
Yeah, I don't know how all that went down. I wasn't there, you know, and like Miles's book is so sensational. But yeah, it's like I think Miles is the best example of like the things that he left behind, you know, playing with Charlie Parker. Like he could have just stayed there. And like we would still think he's one of the greatest trumpet players ever. But he's like, no, I'm going to make Kind of Blue. And he could have stayed there. And he still would have the best-selling jazz album of all time. Yeah. To this day. He'd still, but I'm going to make a Pitches Brew. I'm going to make On the Corner. I'm going to make Star People. It's like, damn, like all these times where he could have just been like, wow, I really did something radical and like cemented myself in the history of like music. And those are the moments where the dude was like, no, I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to go weirder. Oh shit, like Dave Holland, you're going to play electric bass, right? Like, you know, all this shit with like the fashion choices. That's how the dude lived his life.
I wanted to do a whole project just on Miles Davis's fashion. And my teacher was like, no, we can't do that. But I was like, but seriously, like, who else is dressing like this?
It relates to
it's completely part of the music.
You should just somebody should do this. Like map out on a timeline, like the albums and the album covers, and then above it, so you see visually, like have like pictures, and just see the way the fashion evolves with the music, evolves with the album art, and it's like you really can't understand what's going on without that aspect.
Yeah. There's so many, fashion, of course, it's never going to die. Fashion is always going to be a thing. But I think what holds a lot of people back, a lot of creative artists and stuff, they think it's vain to dress a certain way or to dress eccentrically or whatever. Like, you're not afraid to, like, wear some crazy shit. Like, I like your style, you know?
You know, it like clothes and shopping and capitalism and like the fashion industry, like you can't just lump all those things together, right? Like I think there's a little bit of laziness and fearfulness. Like when you dress a certain way, there's no hiding. So it's like, are you hiding because like you haven't figured out how to express yourself visually, right? Like by the way, my clothes are not expensive. I don't wear any brands. I don't wear, you know, other than like, you know, some like local shit. This is like some skateboarding shit. Like there's a culture that's part of this. But like I don't wear fucking Gucci. I don't wear like Guess or Louis Vuitton or any of these names. But people often compliment me on the clothes that I'm wearing. And that's because I think I'm expressing myself in a way that's sincere. And most of the compliments I get are from people that I know. Being like, oh, like you're really like on some Ray shit today with like what you're wearing or the way that like you're presenting yourself. Like, I think that's dope because I know like you're speaking your voice. Like I think people can look at me and have a sense of how I'm gonna play. Yeah. Without hearing me play, and that's really powerful and valuable for my career. So when I walk into a studio, if I came in like all buttoned up and whatever, and then I play how I play,
they'd be like,
it would kind of, yeah, it'd kind of be like, what are you?
I thought we hired somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, or like they, you know, they hire me to like, to, you know, whatever, maybe they know me, maybe they don't, but like if I come in and I like have like a, you know, a big loud coat, like white leather jacket, like some kicks or some shit, sunglasses, like bringing vibe, I don't have to explain to them how I'm about to perform. And that like makes me able to be relaxed, be confident.
Yeah.
They can be relaxed, right? Because they get it.
Right.
It's like, you know, it's like the truth will set you free. You know, I'm being really true to what I'm trying to express in what I wear, in how people see me. And it relates to the music. It matters.
Definitely matters. I find myself being a little bit more of a chameleon in that way, going through different phases of, you know, wearing, depending on the show, depending on the music and stuff. And I'm trying to create this thing, like, trying to feel more like the same across the board, you know, being able to feel comfortable enough to dress how I want on the stiffest of gigs.
Do you ever see that as a fun challenge of like, okay, I was given a dress code for this gig. So I always see that, like, to relate it to music, it's like somebody's giving me chord changes as a bass player. And like my whole purpose in life is to see how far I can stretch. Like, can I get away with reharms? Can I get away with inverting the chords? When and how can I do that? And like often, initially, like you might think like, oh, there's strict rules here. But if you think creatively, and that's why the fashion's important as an artist, because I'll look at a thing, they're like, oh, like you have to wear a suit and whatever. And maybe I'll do like a pocket square. Maybe I'll do something fun with my socks, right? Cufflinks, like spam calls. My apologies.
All good.
So maybe it's a small thing, but that subversion is like really in the spirit of like art. It's like a very jazz musician thing. It's like, how can I follow the rules and break them at the same time?
Yeah. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, pocket squares, wearing some fly sneakers with a suit, especially if they're black.
I like the how many buttons can I unbutton game before somebody says something, you know, because it's like, it's so funny, like with the gender roles too, the way like women are encouraged to show more and men are encouraged to show less.
Yeah.
You know, I saw a video, this actress was getting yelled at by the paparazzi, like, show your leg. You know, like you would never say that to a man.
Or you just shouldn't say that to a woman in any situation.
It's just like, that's sort of exactly what I want to poke fun at. Is like, well, why can't I have my tits out? Like, you know, what's wrong with a little male cleavage, right? Course.
Yeah, some taco meat. Yeah, Taco
Tuesday. Like you would never tell Sydney Sweeney to like cover her cleavage because like there's some executive that's saying that her tits are her brand, right? That's you know, there's people whose job it is to like make her tits look great. Yeah. And that's so stupid because she's a great actress. You know? So it's like,
why can't we just see that? But then on the flip side, there are male actors who are only getting hired because of their muscles.
Sure.
Too.
Absolutely. So it's like, my whole thing is like, if you're going to go out of your way to tell me to like do something with the buttons of my shirt, versus like talk to me about like the music or the shit that actually matters. You know, I understand decency. I understand that. Yeah. That's important. But realistically, it's like everything that you see on mass, like it's out there. You know, nobody is prude at this point. You know, I saw some dude's legs getting blown off on Twitter the other day from Ukraine, like in the war. I don't want to see that shit. No. I'm just like scrolling the internet and I have to see some like human beings' legs get blown off.
So you're talking about decency.
It's like, oh, my kids don't want to. Yeah, it's like, fucking spare me. Seriously. Yeah. So, like, but you know, that being said, like, I always, if I'm in a room talking about like, playing like religious weddings and things like that, of course you want to be respectful, but like, I'm not whipping my cock out, okay? Like, I'm never gonna be that guy who's like, I'm punk rock, but I'm not that punk rock. Okay?
Yeah,
like,
we don't need that fashion statement.
and I'm not trying to use it to that extent, but like that's sort of the whole point. It's like, it's really funny to me that like you're going to talk to an artist, a creative person, about like, going back to what we're saying, like dress code, you're going to give me rules and stuff like that. Like, I laugh at your rules, and I'm going to find a way to laugh at your rules in any possible way that I can. And I think the clothes are a great way to do that.
That's a great,
And it puts me in a frame of mind. If I take that same approach to music, I end up making some really cool shit.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't be conservative in one department of our life and then expect to be
just
a wild...
Oh, I pick up my bass, and now it's like, nah, dude, I don't got it. Like, some people like really have that skill. Most of us don't.
Yeah.
And shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, we shouldn't be censoring ourselves in that way. And honestly, I see, I don't want to say people like you, but like this attitude of like, here's the rules, and then let's just fuck with them a little bit. Like, I really appreciate that quality of what you're bringing to the table, what other people bring in that way, because like on one hand, yes, somebody organizing an event or a band might be a little bit stressed out, but you need this spontaneity, you need this off-the-wallness. That's the only way we can be creative.
Yeah, I think our business is really funny because you have very different temperaments all colliding together. Like, just thinking about like stage managers and front of house staff, the people who drive the trucks, like our ground transportation, you're dealing with airline pilots are part of the equation. You're dealing with like very, very different dispositions in order to do their job well, having to all work together. So there's like gonna be friction. We fall on like the extreme, like we're the loosest. And we're supposed to be like, there's all these like cliches and stereotypes about like the talent and handling talent and shit like that. It's like, yeah, like we're there to be that chaotic energy, that wild spontaneity, like fun, like Dionysian. Because like the stage manager ain't gonna do it. The security guy, that's not his job to do it. The camera operators, television, like all these people have like, it's more like the mathematical side of the brain. There's a beauty to that, to like executing it. And within that, there needs to be space for us to not conform. Mm-hmm. And like I've worked with great stage managers who really make me comfortable, and tour managers and everything who like just really let me be myself. This is not an excuse for artists and people in bands and musicians and creatives to just fuck off and like be late for shit and
of course
be drunk and whatever. Like, it's not that, but it's more of like, there's room for playfulness and silliness and childlike and making a little bit of a mess.
For sure.
And then cleaning it up.
Yeah.
And I think generally we've tightened up a lot. And
as a culture,
and like
society.
what we were saying earlier, it's like the stakes are higher because everybody's barely making rent. Like people really can't afford to like get fired or lose their reputation. Like, I feel like we all feel like we're one fuck up away from like losing our apartments. So like there's not a whole lot of room for risk taking, I guess. And we should be doing something about that. I think we should be pushing back a little on the, like, I think all different kinds of gigs, like whether it's corporate events, like private events, or even in like bands I play in and stuff like that. Like, I remember 10 years ago, like playing in jam bands and stuff like that, and all different kinds of things. And like, we would, like, on our gigs in New York, like, try shit and go places and like, hey, like we're gonna do this song like completely differently, and now it's like I see people can't even agree on a tempo on Valerie, can't even like lock in a groove on like a 2-chord song, because they're overthinking so much or trying to play it just like the record.
For sure.
And it's like, number one, like I haven't heard a single drummer in New York play the groove to Valerie the way it is on there. It's like actually hilarious. It's like a great example because I feel like it's people trying to give the squares what they want. And the squares don't know what they want, so you're never going to give it to them.
That's right. They don't know what they're looking for.
It's our job to tell them what's cool.
That's right.
And just by being cool and walking the walk, and then y'all follow. Y'all get in line behind us and shit. But it's not this like, hey, I hope I play what the yuppies like, so I like get money.
The yuppies?
Yeah.
Like the normies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do people still say yuppies? Is that like some New York shit?
I don't know. I feel like it's like a... I don't really know what a...
That's what we used to call...
I thought a yuppie was like a burnt-out old hippie.
No, the yuppies are like the Wall Street crowd.
Okay, all right.
You know, like the 90s with the big lapels and...
Sure.
You know, they go out in New York City and listen to jazz. Like
yeah,
the yuppies.
jazz bros.
Not even like... Just the suits, man.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah, everything's kind of gotten yuppified.
They want to hear everything just like the record. Like people really get off, especially nowadays, with they just want to hear it exactly as it was.
I
they
think,
can sing along.
I think that feels radical to them because most of their experiences are through their phone. You know, I'm gonna hear a song that I like, but I'm not even gonna be listening to it because it's the background of a TikTok video. And that's how like I'm experiencing the song. So just to hear it played live with instruments is fucking blowing their mind already. Then you're gonna play it with a bossa nova groove, you know, or
then they don't even recognize it anymore.
Yeah, it's like so I sort of have so much sympathy for the working musician because what do you do? Like, can you imagine being on a wedding gig and like just doing anything differently from the recording? Like, that's why I don't do those gigs, is because I fuck with it way too much. And I don't get called back. And I think it's hilarious because...
Well, there's a special place for you, though. There's a much better place.
Well, you know what's going to happen is when somebody's doing something cool, I'm going to end up playing on the record. And... that to me is more important. And then maybe I'll be, oh shit, like that's the guy who played on that really cool thing. Like people like Pino Palladino because Pino Palladino's a sick bass player, but people also like Pino Palladino because he played on that D'Angelo album. And for a lot of people, that's enough to just be compelled to somebody's artistry because you participated in something that's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of like going back to the athletes. It's like, yo, like this dude was on a Super Bowl winning team. Oh, word. Like,
can't argue with that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like winners fuck with you.
Winners fuck with you?
Yeah, it's like, yo, I'm a winner. Like, I fuck with that dude because that dude's gonna help me win.
Yeah.
Versus like, I'm a winner. Like, there's 20 bass players. Right, I could have on my record, like 19 of them kind of sound the same.
Yeah, do you want
because they're scared to lose their gig.
Yeah, do you want a bunch of linebackers or do you want... Well, I mean, yeah. Well, you got to work as a team no matter what. You do need a balance of team playing and your own ability to cultivate your...
Do you feel like there's assumption that people who have unique... And I'm asking you this. Do you feel like... Because you're both a band, like you hire people, you contract, you refer people, like, hey, I'm going to recommend you this musician, you know, and you're staking your reputation on that.
That's
right.
Bigger and bigger stakes these days.
Yeah. So like you are on both sides and you're also in bands and you're just a musician and you want to make cool shit and play with cool people. So like people who have a really distinct voice on their instrument. I think of musicians like maybe Thundercat would be a good example as bass players, or maybe on a different instrument like you know, maybe a Chris Dave would be an interesting example too of like somebody who has a really strong voice. Do you feel like there's the perception that those people are difficult to work with, or like, man, like Thundercat's just going to do that Thundercat thing.
You're asking would I refer Thundercat on a wedding gig?
Right. Yeah, I guess so. Like, and like, why would you or why wouldn't you? Like, would you ever refer Thundercat for, like, let's say there was like, say you were homies with Thundercat, right? Like, that's your boy.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you could just, and like
Let's
some
say
dude it's like a $5,000 gig.
Okay.
You know, like, so dude's
Like,
gonna get
he's
he's
making
gonna,
$5,000.
Yeah, like he's stoked.
Okay.
He's down. You know, like
Yeah.
him taking the gig is not a question.
Yeah.
But like, would you feel like you can comfortably go to the band leader and say, call this guy?
If it was like a high profile event like that and everybody was making 5,000, then I would know that what I'm putting together is a band of personalities. And that would absolutely be the first reason why I would pick somebody who's more eccentric. But no matter what kind of gig it is, no matter how high the stakes, I think you always need to hit these benchmarks of, are they reliable? Are they going to show up on time? Are they going to answer text messages and email within a timely manner, or let them go for like a week or 2 weeks at a time? Mm-hmm. Because those kind of people who don't have just the basics together of professionalism, that's like, okay, you might be like Elton John material or something, but
that's functioning in society. And I hear that a lot. I hear people talk about like, be reliable, like, don't look like shit, don't smell like shit. Like, why do we feel like we have to say this to each other?
Because sometimes you have some really fantastic musicians out there, and they put all of their thinking, their practicing, and their everything is going into their musicianship. And then there's these other benchmarks that if only they were to be met, if you can take criticism without your ego being destroyed, if you can show up on time, if you can get along with people, you don't even have to like be likable, but just get along with people.
Right.
You know, don't make a fuss, don't fuck things up. And then how's your musicianship?
Right.
But there's a lot of great musicians. It's like, come on, guys. Like, we just got out of music school. I know you're drowning in debt. I know you're thinking about, like, you're in scarcity mode. You're hustling a bunch of $100 gigs. But get these things together. Like, do what you need to do on a regular basis to make yourself feel good.
I want to talk about, not to totally change course, but, like, I want to talk, like, real numbers and, like, what the expectation is for ourselves and what the expectation is for the public and for the people who hire us as musicians. It's really common to get paid $100 for a gig in New York right now. And that means if you're working 5 days a week, you're making $500 a week, which in 4 weeks in a month is $2,000, which is not covering your rent.
It doesn't cover your expenses at all.
It really, like, I'm talking like if you want to have a quality of, let's pretend like you actually have like a 1-bedroom apartment and don't live with roommates, like, which is a reasonable thing for any adult in America to want and to ask for, right? Like, it's literally impossible. So then it's like, okay, what if I do 7 gigs a week? So now I'm either working every single day or I'm doing multiple gigs, which might mean like I'm wearing maybe one, I have to wear different clothes or bring different equipment. Like for me as a bass player, people are like, oh, can you come do this gig on upright in the morning? And then maybe at night I'll get called to do a gig on electric bass. So then it's like, for me to do those 2 gigs, I either have to have an upright with me all day, own a car. So, okay, now I have like a car payment and gas. Now I'm supposed to have that overhead. Mm-hmm. So like, what's the solution other than working yourself into the goddamn ground?
Are you asking me?
Well,
But because it is just, I think every musician and a lot of freelancers can relate to this problem.
yeah, I think like you have to do whatever you can to kind of disassociate yourself, like for yourself internally and for the way that the scene perceives you. Like, I hope people are like, I'm not going to bother to call Ray Cetta for this $100 gig unless it's like, hey, it's some homie shit, or like, yo, like this music's dope. Like, there's other mitigating aspects to it, but it's just like, and the only not because I'm too good or anything, or like I'm further along in my career. It's because I really put myself at risk of paying my bills by taking that gig.
Yeah. Another thing I've been that I was thinking about a while back was you very quickly become the camp that you're associating yourself with.
Yes.
And it happens faster than you think it does.
It takes one gig. If you do a salsa gig and you're on the internet playing a salsa gig, the next time your phone rings, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be for another salsa gig. Okay, I can speak to this because I have like 2 careers. There's people who don't know I play the bass. There's people who don't know I play the tuba, which is crazy if you look at it from like my body of work. And if you took 2 seconds to get to know me, like you would know, like my thing is not like one or the other, but people see a picture of you doing a thing, and it's like people are jumping to very big conclusions based on very small amounts of data. And so we need to really like be clear with our own messaging and our own narrative as to like who we are and what we're about. Like every gig you play matters because like people are going to see that shit.
Yeah.
You know, or don't, or like there's parts of my career that I keep very private because like I don't want people to associate me with certain things. I don't want to be known as like the guy who does this thing or the guy who's in this scene. Like, and you know what I'm talking about.
You don't want to be the guy in that scene
or the guy in that show. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I see, like it's the sort of thing like
Definitely.
I don't even want to like say it on camera, you know, because
you put your baseball cap on and you head over to the union and you do a little big band rehearsal and you're like, I'm doing this because I want to hang. I'm not doing this because I live here.
The only reason, yeah, I mean, the only reason I'm doing anything is ideally because I want to be there, because I like the music. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that because you have to really like sort of curate this like shopping experience almost, because that's like when people are hiring people for gigs, like you're basically in the biggest shopping mall for musicians in the world in New York City, right? So like how
except you're not gonna, it's not a one-stop shop. It's like kind of like those really annoying stores where they lay out like, here's like a pair of jeans over here, and then here's like a teddy bear, and then a few more pair of jeans and a shirt, and it's you don't know what you're looking for. You don't know how to find what you're looking for.
And there's not a price tag on anything. You just make it up.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, people ask me, like, what's your rate? And I'm like, well, for what? And it's like, people freak out because when I get asked what's my rate, I always have 5 follow-up questions that include, like, what equipment am I bringing? Like, what am I wearing? Like, you know, the timing, like, how and when am I going to be paid? Like, if I'm not going to be paid for 2 weeks, like, it costs more. If I'm not going to be paid for a month, it costs more. Like, all this shit. And then I'm immediately, like, hard to work with. I'm immediately like not being compliant, and like I'm asking very basic questions, because like that's basic shit.
Yeah.
And people often like don't include that stuff. So like you have to ask, because otherwise you're setting yourself up to fail, which gets into number 2. I'm trying to do a good job on your gig. I'm trying to come looking dope with the right gear that I know works because I knew what I was bringing. So I'm like, oh, I got to bring this thing. We make sure there's batteries in it.
Right.
Right. Like I want to be on time. Well, let me make sure I know exactly where I'm going. If there's an elevator that I have to wait for, like all this shit, right? It's like,
are we going till 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. or?
Yeah, because that depends, like, how am I going to be able to get home? All these things, like, what does it cost me to get home? Like, so many things. And I can't give a rate unless I know those things. But for some reason, people think it's like, oh, like, you come play bass and like it's some kind of hobby or some like voucher that I'm giving out or something. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not an amusement park ride and you pay, it's not Coney Island or like you pay $5 and you ride the ride.
Right. Yeah.
It's so much more fluid than that. So I think you have to like very aggressively and assertively, like when you're doing business with like new people and stuff, is like ask questions.
I wish everybody did that. I wish that was more normal across the board. But I feel like the reality is everybody is just hoping that they get called for that gig. And what that creates is this competition in that way.
It's a race to the bottom.
It can be a race
to be the
bottom.
easiest to work with. I want to be easy. Like, being easy to work with does not mean like you let yourself get fucked.
Don't get fucked. Don't allow yourself to get fucked. I don't.
And
yeah.
if you don't let
agree.
yourself get fucked, that doesn't mean you're hard to work with. That means you're hard to fuck. And I want to be unfuckable. Yeah, like absolutely. Like it's kind of funny, like the gaslighting that happens where, because people want to fucking pay musicians less, and I'm talking to band leaders and club owners and agencies and Broadway. I'm talking to everyone. None of that shit pays enough. Broadway don't pay enough. Mm-hmm. Radio City Christmas Show don't pay enough.
Yeah.
You could get mad at your union, or you could get mad at shit or this or that, or you could say no to the gig and keep yourself killing enough and valuable enough where they want, like, there's cats who do Broadway shows who negotiate higher rates for themselves.
Uh-huh.
There's cats who
negotiation is a normal part of life in every aspect. It doesn't matter if you're in the union or not in the union. Negotiation is just knowing what value you provide and understanding that this other person is a human who is also trying to make value for themselves out of this transaction. So personally, I'm not like, I never try to just fuck a person with money unless I feel fucked with, I always say, this is what I'm worth. Let me know if you can handle that.
You can say no. I think it's hard when you're broke to say no to money, to any money. Like, that's just, that needs to be said. And most musicians, most professional musicians are not comfortable right now, are not like saving huge amounts of money, are not planning families. Like people who are doing those things, like, it's really hard, and it's often two people working. Like, I know a number of people who had kids recently. Mom and dad are both working their ass off. And there's a village it takes to just like have a normal life. And, despite what you may think, like, even some of the most like visible, successful people like are not like killing it. Like, nobody's out here making Taylor Swift money. Even like nobody's out here making Drake money. Even people who are associated with those acts, like, oh, I wrote a song for this person.
You get fucked even harder.
Yo,
when you
I could tell you,
tour with people like that.
I could tell you some crazy rates, like when I was touring with Randy, and what we were getting paid, and then I was talking to some people who were on like bigger touring gigs, right? Because we were playing like Beacon Theater, like selling out the Beacon Theater was probably the biggest show that we did, which is pretty big. But they were also playing in Kansas City for like 1,200 people, playing in Denver for like 850 people, right? So it's like, okay. And we were getting paid good. Yeah. It was a small act. There wasn't a lot, like, every situation is different. But the point is, like, I knew people who were on tour at the same time of year, playing stadiums, playing festivals, playing huge gigs where I know the artist is having like merch sales and VIP packages, appearances, like, sponsor support, all this label support, like all this shit, like distribution, all that. And I was making twice as much money. per show.
With a smaller artist?
With a much smaller artist.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like, so, again, not like like this dude was selling out the Beacon Theater, so this wasn't nobody, but I'm saying like multiple tiers above, and like the musicians on my gig were getting paid twice as much per show, if not more.
Yeah.
And that kind of blew my mind and made me think about like, why are we saying yes to the, like, I'm not saying we should all like go on strike, but like I think we're saying yes to a lot of things way too easily as a community that need to at least be like more closely examined before like asking questions like, okay, you're going to pay me like, you know, X amount of money to do this gig, and just even laying it out to the client or the artist, like, well, I'm going to, you know, you're asking me to do this, and this, and then you're paying me this, and that works out to this much a month or this much a year. And then you can go to that person and say, do you see why like this is kind of tricky for me right now? And, you know, they might say like, oh, well, you know, 1 million people like want to play with Drake or Taylor. There's probably people who would like play for free in Taylor Swift's band.
Oh yeah.
But like, or Drake or whatever. But if you think that like doing the Taylor Swift gig or doing the Drake gig or doing the big artist gig is gonna get you to a gig that pays a lot of money automatically, no, what that's going to get you is another tour that pays like shit. And like you could work really hard and like parlay things. Great. Awesome. But like you could also not do that. You know,
not do that gig.
Yeah, like, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't have experiences and build their resumes and stuff like that. But like, if you're working for a major label artist, you know, and you know, making less than $500 a show, you're getting robbed.
For sure,
you're getting robbed because you need to know the amount of dollars that are being tossed around with merch and VIP sales and all this shit.
Yeah, there's a lot more robbery going on the high level, that's for sure. Because there is so much more competition for people who want that gig. I heard that the Beyonce music video where she had like a whole marching brass band, I heard it was like an all-day shoot or maybe a multiple-day shoot. Mm-hmm. Everybody only got like $400 from that. I heard that was the rate. That's just gossip. But I'm pretty sure, you know, which is fucked up because she's using like mostly black females and underpaying them.
You want to empower black females? Give them money. I'll tell you the best way to empower black females is write them a fucking check and say, go make your art.
Yeah.
Not work for me and break your body.
Yeah.
Give me your labor. Give me your body. Right? Because that's what, as performers, as artists, like I'm selling my body. When I perform on sousaphone and I have my shirt off and I'm rocking out, I'm carrying a 30-something pound horn on my shoulder and swinging it around and blowing my brains out on that thing, and I'm bleeding from the face at the end of the show, and I'm smiling because I'm happy to, but like that's my body, and I'm not going to be doing that in my 50s and my 60s. I'm giving that. So what am I going to get in return? $400?
Some bar
and
money.
What's crazy, right? That is bar money. That is, you can make more bartending actually. What's crazy is, I think that gig is paying $400 because relative to what we're being offered, which is, you know, I get a lot of calls for, can you do this gig for between $100 and $200, like to play a gig in New York City. And I don't want to go on a deep dive of like the economics of running a club, of running a venue, and all that. Like it's not my job to have your business model figured out as a venue. Number one, if you want a chef, you pay the chef. If you want the best waiters, the best bartenders, you pay them, right? And you don't tell the waiters and the chef and the bartenders to bring audiences, to bring patrons.
That's a different job.
It's crazy that musicians are getting asked to make a business model tenable.
Yeah.
But the reality is, all these gigs that you're getting called for as a freelance musician in New York are paying between like $100 and $200. normally. And, you know, there's obviously, it can go higher, it can go much higher. But if those gigs paid $400, Beyonce would have to pay more, because Beyonce can't be paying the same as the gig in a bar. And I'm not saying that like fucking every local music venue and this and that needs to be paying each musician $400 a night, but like, how much would it cost to pay a trio $1,200?
Well, yeah, I mean, not saying that I wouldn't jump at the chance to play with Beyonce for $400, but if on
we on the ground level were asking for more, then Beyonce would be offering more, because she wouldn't. Like, we have to change the economy of what we're doing, and it starts with us as a community, as a collective, saying like, that's not enough. And if like you're offering a band like this, I'm going to call out this club, the Canary Club in New York that just closed, started asking people to play for like 4 or 5 hours.
Oof.
Like as the gig is like
4 or 5 sets.
And paying. Ugh. So they didn't like cut the money, but like they started asking bands to like, instead of having 2 bands, they'd have like 1 band play for like 5-hour gig, you know, and pay for the whole band, for everybody. It's like, here's $500 or $600. Right.
God, yeah.
As also like, you know, you're kind of committing tax fraud by only paying everybody $600 all the time. I'm not accusing Canary Club of committing tax fraud, but a lot of clubs, a lot of venues are paying $600 to the band. For those of you listening who do not or may not know, $600 is the maximum that you can pay somebody without having to report that payment to the IRS.
Right. So it's just it's a expense at the end of the year instead of a 1099.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, but meanwhile, if I do 20 gigs as a band leader for clubs in New York in a year, and they each pay me $600, then that becomes an amount of money that the government might be interested in. And now I'm getting, so it's like the burden is just constantly being placed on the musicians, like from a tax standpoint, from an audience standpoint, you know, from a labor standpoint of like more hours for less money, and like it's got to get better.
Yeah, it's got to turn around for sure. I said this before in another conversation, but I'm very jaded on the whole local bar and club scene. I'm just like, you know, unless I fuck with the people, unless I really, really fuck with the venue, I fuck with Radagast. I have a lot of fun doing that.
They let you do your thing. But
it's also a showcase, and it stimulates a lot of business.
It's good for content.
It's good for content.
Which doesn't hurt.
But for the most part, 99% of like bars and clubs, I don't give a shit.
Everybody, I mean, here's what happened in the past 2 or 3 years was every single club raised the price of their drinks, of their food, if they have a cover charge, of their cover charge. And I haven't heard of a single venue or club that's given a band a significant raise. Yeah. I get called for these gigs at these and they pay the same that they did a year or 2 years or 3 years ago.
This is where the importance of negotiation comes in. If you understand that you're providing a lot of value for a club, you can always just say, hey guys, you can find another band who does what we do. And we don't have to.
I'm wishing for a world.
Put your balls on the table.
I'm wishing, absolutely, balls goes. Plopped menacingly on the table. Mm-hmm. So, what happens when this is very idealistic thinking? But what happens when a club can't find a band, or finds a band, but like they're dog shit? Like it's too, you know, it's like, you know, a bunch of kids or whatever, like not professional musicians, you know, maybe it's like a bunch of tech bros who like have a band and they rehearse in the office every Friday night. Like you get those kind of bands. What happens when the level goes down to a point where it's like, oh shit, like this isn't sustainable? And like, one, can we force people to raise the bar by lowering the bar, if that makes sense? So hey, like you're not going to get the good talent, so how low does it go before people start realizing? And that's what makes me nervous, is like, you know, are we setting ourselves up to be obsolete by asking for more?
we will not ever be obsolete. I still have yet to see AI do what we do.
I'm not talking about AI.
I know
necessarily, but I am talking about. I look at like airline seats. You know, as I fly a lot and have been for somewhat long, not like since like the 70s, you know, but you look at what a economy ticket as far as like the seat and the service that you're provided, and just slowly over the years, your seat size, your meals that are provided, everything, your baggage that you can take on board, everything's been like slowly chipped away. Where now the quality of the customer experience has dropped to a level that's unrecognizable from where that industry used to be. Like the airline industry used to be like luxury, right? And things kind of cost about the same lately, with like where prices are at, with what people are making. You're really getting a lot less for your money, and people are totally cool with it. And I see that entertainment that people are consuming suffer a similar effect, where the quality has been slowly, imperceivably eroded, because corporations can play the long game to the point where, I mean, you could look at it as like people would go dancing in a club and used to see a big band, like 18 pieces. And then it was like, now the bands are like, you would never see a band that big anywhere.
Not where the band is actually getting paid.
Right.
Unless they're just all there because what else am I doing on a Tuesday night? I guess I'll play a big band.
But it's not, I mean, I'm saying like it's so abnormal to see like a band that has more than 3, 4, 5 people, you know?
Yeah.
And now you're seeing like this hybrid DJ live instrument thing. And, you know, at that point, like there's nowhere left to go but canned music.
Yeah, and I think that's the direction.
I feel like we're holding on to live instruments being relevant by a thread.
Yeah, I think what we do is extremely valuable, but antiquated at the same time. It's rapidly becoming very antiquated.
Like this is so archaic compared to this, you know, or this, right? Like how many kids like are playing instruments versus how many kids are fucking around on an MPC and Logic and Ableton. Like I don't know if those statistics exist, but if I had to guess, most kids are making music like not, you know, this is not like their primary vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like the cliche, like, oh, I'm going to like play guitar for chicks. Like that's so gone, I think, in pop culture.
Yeah, the young teenagers aren't like, I'm gonna swoon my partner with a little guitar song.
Yeah, that's dated.
It is.
It's super dated.
Yeah.
And I think that's something like we all kind of have to reckon with too, is like your instrument is not your personality. Your instrument is like not your brand. Like your creativity is, your musicianship is. That's
a pretty freeing, you know, I've been thinking about that sort of thing, and that's a very freeing notion. It's also very scary for a lot of people too, because it's like, oh, how do I just go out to like a musician hang and present my brand without my instrument? Or
that gets back to the clothes, like, which can help. Like I think the clothes really freed me up, because for a long time, I mean, you find me on Instagram, I'm Ray Funky Bass. Like I've been playing bass for the vast majority of my life, not just my adult life. I've been playing bass since I was 9 years old. Yeah. It's like so a part, like I can't imagine life without this instrument, you know, but at the same time, I have to give the other parts of me enough credit. Like they can be informed by this, sure, but you know, your imagination is going to be the thing that really sparks people.
Yeah, your personality, how you relate to other people, and how you relate to yourself, your relationship with yourself. Yeah, that's how people do relate to you. And that absolutely comes through in your music, too.
I don't think people like will worry so much about how well you play your instrument if the personality part is like I have a friend, he's foreign, he's from out of the country, super interesting cat, like hobbyist musician, right? Like has instruments around, like, you know, work his way around Ableton a little bit. I love hearing this dude's music because although is the mix on all his stuff like dog shit, you know, he doesn't know how to mix, you know, like there's all these things that I could be like, is right, like he doesn't tune his guitar that great, you know what I mean? But like the shit is undeniably saucy. And it has flavor, and it's like you listen to this dude's music and it gives you the same feeling that like hanging out with him does. And I think that's like ultimately what people crave is like they want that feeling that you give them. And you get good at an instrument to create a vehicle for that, to create a vessel for that. But it's like, you know, the idea doesn't start here. Like the idea starts here and the idea starts here, right? That's all the fun stuff. I'm just able to better express all those things with this than anything else. But that doesn't have to be the case, and for the vast majority of people, that's not the case. So if you're like relying, like if you can't be cool and shit without your horn, like you're not gonna all of a sudden be cool.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to get somebody's phone number, like with you need your horn to do it, like you're not gonna get it.
True. Yeah.
So
yeah, got to go to the school of life and take a look in the mirror and learn a little bit about yourself.
And it doesn't mean, I feel like people think like, oh, I have to go out to this jam session or I have to network. Like, man, go fucking touch grass, man. Go sit in Central Park or Prospect. Like, go get out of the city, you know, for the New Yorkers, or go be in nature. It doesn't have to be this thing where you become a socialite or you become an influencer or like, you know, everybody. Like, you need to make one good friend who you connect with and you make dope shit with, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you just need that one colleague or collaborator who might be able to unlock something. Now, when you're out meeting a bunch of people in New York, you increase your chances of making that connection much quicker. But, you know, there's also something to be said for like, wow, I went and I centered myself and I like didn't get caught up in like shedding or the hustle or anything like that. And I'm feeling like true and center because I did what I needed to do that. And then everybody who crossed paths with you is going to feel that and want to tap into that.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh, I hung out at New Blue with somebody and like we got drunk.
Except it is great sometimes, like, you know, Ronnie Tabara, you probably ran into him.
Maybe.
Yeah, he's a guitar player, plays for a lot of different artists and stuff. I had a random night, I was like, oh, I'm going to go see Rebirth at Blue Note. And I went by myself, and then my friend John Cushing showed up afterwards and had a cigarette, and we were just like, yeah, Ronnie was outside, and we were like, oh shit, man, haven't seen you in a long time. And then saw him like 2 more times that week, because I was just like going out. So, you know, there is something to be said about just putting yourself out there, and you're going to run into somebody you know, or maybe you don't know.
Absolutely.
And you're going to connect with them in like a special way.
So who are you going to be in that moment? Because that moment, like, it's kind of inevitable if you choose to exist in the world. You know, some people choose to not exist in the world.
Yeah, it's really just if you have the balls to show yourself and step outside your door and put yourself out there and not hide, then life will say, oh, how about a little bit of this or that? People, opportunities, synchronicities, all sorts of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the Togetherness Orchestra.
The band. So in like 2018, 2019, I was doing a gig, steady gig. It was cool. It was paying me very well. And I was at a point where I had sort of gathered a really amazing network and community of homies that I just thought were all these dope musicians that I play with separately, like this person over here and this person over here. And, you know, occasionally, like, we sometimes end up in the same music making setting, and it was like, wow, this is incredible. So for me, it was, how can I just get all the people that I think are dope in the same room doing dope shit? Because, like, there's almost nothing more frustrating than, like, oh my God, like, this band is so killing, like, this person's in the horn section and this drummer and, like, these singers, like, this is such an all-star band. And it's like, for a corporate client where you can't play too loud and, like, stick to the set list, and, like, we're gonna play, like, Don't Stop Believin'. And I'm like, y'all understand, like, this is a blessing of all blessings to have these artists in a room together making music, and you're gonna have them play Don't Stop Believin'. Like, it would break my fucking heart every time that would happen. And so
this is just a wedding band situation, corporate band,
anything. Just like imagine you walk into a gig and it's like there's like Nadav and, like, you know, all these. And for me, it was always funny too, because I have very, very separate scenes, like from being a brass player, from, like, my jazz background, from, like, my Latin music background in New York, even, like, I know amazing classical musicians, you know, and, you know, seeing all these people in different places, and then when we would all be able to be together, it was always on some, like, you know, I remember doing, like, the theater department at some high school, like, in some January or whatever, like, doing their show, and it was all, like, heavy cats, because it was, like, slow, nobody had a gig, you know. It was like, we're gonna do this high school production of, like, whatever the musical was, and I'm like, man, like, why are we doing this? Like, why is this the music that we're making? And not to be on your high horse or, like, to look down on any style of music, but it's like, you know, imagine you get, like, you know, for the football fans, you know, you get, like, John Elway and, like, Jerry, imagine, like, you know, the All-Star game or whatever, you know, and it's like, okay, we're gonna play Frisbee.
Yeah,
it's like
that is, you know, that is the feeling.
It's like asking Gordon Ramsay to make you a Big Mac.
Which he would make the shit out of a Big Mac.
No, but he's not allowed to make. No, that's the point. Is he has to make just a Big Mac.
Right. The way a Big Mac.
The way a Big Mac is made.
Yeah.
Isn't that fucked up? Like, isn't that like, wow? Right. Like, what a waste of talent. I never get, like, that high on it, but it's just like, man. So I was feeling like that all the time on these gigs, where I decided, like, I have some resources now, like, I'm going to give these people something cool to do. Like, if I could, you know, how do I want to hear this person play their instrument? Like, my dude Tom on keys, it's just like, how can I just give him the opportunity to use all the different sounds, like his organ sounds, like, dude is great, like, organ specifically player, and, like, his synth sound design is super cool. He builds these really dope arpeggiators, like, that's what I want to spend time doing with that guy and giving this guy the opportunity to do. So the band started as, like, a vehicle to have the people that I love, like, do dope shit in a free setting, but a structured enough setting where it was like, you know, we're not just coming in here and, like, jamming and, like, whatever. Like, there's a goal here.
How did that start with you? Writing tunes, lead sheets?
Yeah, it's just right. You know, I think people overthink it so much, like, with their projects and their endeavors. Like, write some material and stick it in front of motherfuckers. This is what we're playing.
So you brought in lead sheets?
I wrote the music, the lyrics. It was cool. The band is the format of it is kind of Quincy Jones inspired, like, large ensemble. Right, like studio orchestra, where you have, like, a band, but then, like, there's a string and a horn section and, like, maybe fucking harp. Yeah. You know, it's like all the sounds, all the instruments are available. I just wanted it to be pretty much every sound is made by a human hand or voice or breath. Like that was kind of one of the secondary goals of it, was like every sound you hear on the recordings was like made by a human producing a sound. And like, I try to be careful with that because technology is awesome. And I could not have made the record without the aid of technology, because this was like, a lot of the production happened during COVID, and I was sending parts to people, you know, like, hey, like, cello homie, like, I know you're in lockdown, like, here's like 6 tunes to play your part on.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, the quality between all the tracks, it's very like high quality recording.
The way I did that actually was, I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, we have an 11-song album. There's also like 3 singles. So there's like 14 songs that I wrote. It's like music, lyrics, and that would like be on guitar, piano. Like I wrote them as like a songwriter. Yeah. Very much like tapping into like songwriter vibes. And then once I had the song and the lyrics, then it's like orchestrate, you know, and then it's like, okay, like what do I want the vibe to be for the band? And that was a lot of fun. So that meant, yeah, that we did have some sessions where we had like a string quartet and we like played the tune or like the horn section. But yeah, some of it was like people sending me parts like for varying degrees of recording quality, varying degrees of saturation or not, like, you know, not better or worse, but some of it was really dry, or some of it was like, oh, like there's some sauce on this. And like basically the worst possible way to make a record
with no control.
Where it's like everything is like, and so I realized like, oh my God, like how do I make this sound remotely like we all played together? And this is like an ensemble instead of, you know, I don't know. So the solution to that was going to Studio G in Brooklyn. A huge shout out to Studio G and to Joel Hamilton and to Hayden Ticehurst, who were all like super, super helpful in post-production. So we're at Studio G. They have a Neve console there in Studio B at Studio G.
Okay. A lot of letters.
Yeah. It's organized, I guess. So they have a great Neve console there. And my favorite bass amp in the world, they have an old Ampeg B15 that is like just my favorite sounding bass amp that I've met, you know.
Okay.
So I was like, once we have everything recorded, you know, I'm gonna go and we're gonna run, like, we're gonna sum the strings, we're gonna sum the horns, and sort of make like a 10 to 12 track, you know, not every single track, you know, because it was like we layered shit. Some of these things had like over 100, you know, tracks by the end of it. But, you know, basically made it so that we ran everything through the Neve console. So at the end, what you end up hearing is everything got recorded on this Neve console. And we mixed it, you know, on the faders, which was a blast to mix that way instead of like drawing in automation or shit like that. So like, and for the final mixes, it was like doing a take, you know,
with the automation of the faders.
Some, but like, no, I'm saying like, you know, hit record and then you're recording off the console, like the out, right? So like, it's some super old school shit that like people don't mix on consoles anymore.
So it just gave everything kind of like an even filter in a way.
Yeah, like it's sort of like everything was at the end of the recording process being like put through the same lens. Yeah, and like it's not perfect, and I'm sure there's like going to be a lot of engineers and stuff who have a lot to say about it. But like it was COVID, nobody had work. Like I called in so many favors. Like I'm playing bass for free on people's sessions like until the day I die. Because like I was like, yo, like please just, you know, record this for me and we'll figure it out later. Yeah. It was like we were like halfway through the album when COVID happened. It's like right in the middle. Like we did a couple singles in like 2019, and then we released the first single in mid-February 2020. And then like by early March, everything was shut down. So I was either sit on this project until like the world opens back up, or like get it done and move on to the next thing. So I was like, okay, how do I get this done? Like, okay, no more big recording sessions with like 10, 12 people in the room. Like that's not happening. So
For a while.
I started just emailing parts, record at home. This was like, I think people forget that not everybody knew how to record at home as of 4 years ago.
And still do. Still don't.
Well, I think now you can kind of expect a professional musician to have home recording capabilities.
Yeah.
I think it's very much taken for granted now. This was like, I had people, on the phone, like asking me how to set up their recording stuff, like especially some of the orchestral musicians who were not trained in like modern music technology in school, like symphony musicians and stuff like that. Yeah. And props to them for getting their shit together and really like learning how to do it, because it wouldn't have happened otherwise. So yeah, we got it all like sounding fairly consistent by just running it through the Neve at the end, and that was a lot of fun to mix with faders too, and solo like the strings and the bass and the guitar, solo like horns and organ, like just hearing all the textures and things like that.
Right.
It's like
being able to mess with it.
Yeah, it was really cool to like manipulate it.
Yeah.
But oh man.
Yeah.
It's such a huge project.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure.
I was doing it all by myself too. Like I definitely learned like a lot about delegating and asking for help. And like even like I think it's crazy to write, arrange, like to write all the lyrics, to write all the music, to arrange everything. It's like, not only is it a shit ton of work, like I don't think it's healthy for the project.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, people feel that stress on the other side. You certainly feel the stress sending out a bunch of emails and trying to wrangle, I don't know, 12 people, 15, 20?
I mean,
25?
The total amount of musicians who played on the album is like, it's around 50 people.
Yeah, that's a fucked up size of that's huge.
And that's without getting into legal. Because I have like, 9 singers or whatever that were involved with it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 9 contracts.
Oh, wow.
That's like...
doing royalties.
All that, like, and we had a pretty basically, I went to them and I was like, this is the deal, you just show up and sing, and they own a piece of it. So it's not a bad deal for them.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, it was just like, we got to make this happen. And being the sole person responsible for the material was kind of daunting and a little bit like, it made the thing take longer. You know what I mean? Like, cause I had to, like, you can't have the singer come in the studio if your lyrics aren't done. Like, really, like you can, but like, you should finish your song. And
for sure.
In this case, and what we were doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of stones to keep pushing up the hill, and I know, we're all human, and personally, I get tired of thinking about the same thing over and over again, and I have moments of self-doubt that slow me down or whatever that is, and it's just really hard to do something that big on your own. So
it was my big lesson in done is better than perfect. Because there was just so many aspects to the project where if I I don't want to say waited, but if like I didn't move forward until like this step I was on was like exactly perfect and how it should have been, like I'd still be working on it. I'd still be spending money and time on it. Yeah. So it just forced me to let go of some shit and surrender to like, hey, this is how the drums sound.
Yeah.
Or these are the lyrics. Like, she's here. She's in the booth. Like, that's the verse, Because with the COVID shit, too, it was, like, convincing people to, like, even get to, like, getting a vocalist to a studio. Because that was the thing. It was like, okay, like, we can record stuff at home, but, like, the lead vocals, like, should probably be in acoustically treated room with a professional microphone and a professional engineer. Like... I want to make a hefty, you know, I don't want it to be like super fucking, we made this in our garage or whatever.
Right.
So, it was so high stakes because like, okay, like COVID, like testing, like masks and with you know, and all this shit. It's like, we're not doing 2 of these sessions. It's like, this isn't happening again. So, you know, even more than usual, it's like, it felt very much like, get it done and this is what you got. And you just got to roll with it.
High stakes. But I'm sure that was like a lesson in accepting imperfection, accepting humanness, not being an extreme perfectionist to a detriment.
It's just being adaptable too. Like, oh, like here's a thing I didn't anticipate that I can't do anything about. I can't change it, you know, adjust around it, you know, like if it doesn't fit in the hole, change the size of the hole. Yeah. You know, like, because otherwise it doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm very much like, I want to make shit happen. I don't think I'm the type of person who's going to put out like, this is like the album and my life's work and like my magnum opus. Like, I think it's a kaleidoscope and, my body of work is going to be made up of like a bunch of small pieces.
Yeah.
But all of them are important, but like none of them are important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, didn't Miles say something about like he hated Kind of Blue or something, or he was like, that album was all right. Yeah. Like later in life, he was like, that was fine, but you know,
over it.
I am where I am now.
Totally different place. Like, why? Yeah, I mean, it's sort of similar. I mean, like, you look at the shit that you did, like when you were younger, when you were in school. You know, it's like, I mean, even the Togetherness Orchestra album. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I did that. Like, I'm not sitting here being like, that's me right now. Like, that was just like a moment in my journey. Yeah. And I captured it the best that I could, but you still kind of had to just be there.
I think that's the only way to really create, like, in a genuine way, is to say, like, what am I inspired by right now? What do I actually want to create? Now let's just hit it. Let's just, like, let's knock it out. And even if that means, like, not everything is perfect, let's just get it done and then move on to the next and breathe through the whole process. Because I feel like one of my personal hang-ups, I know a lot of other people's hang-ups, are they want to be a perfectionist, and that means they just camp on these ideas for months and years. Yes. And then you think back like 10 years ago and like, oh, I really wanted to do this, and you have all these tunes ready to go, and you're like, it doesn't really speak to me anymore. It doesn't feel spontaneous.
Yeah, it's like, but you didn't. Like, oh, I really wanted to do this. Well, you didn't. And now it's like, now that food's gone bad. Like, oh, you go grocery shopping and you get this, oh, I want to cook like this, whatever, right? Yeah. You know, and you leave it in the fridge for a month. Well, oh, now I feel like cooking it. Well, your food, your groceries expired. You can't like, right. You can't, you know, the moments of inspiration and that excitement, that spontaneity, like by its nature is not forever. Right. So like what you do with it and how far you take it in the moment is going to sort of, like, that's going to be the result that you yield, right? But it's, yeah, I mean, you can't let shit cook forever, man. You're gonna burn. That's right. You're gonna burn your food. Yeah, I hear you. Cool. What are you working on right now?
What am I working on? Working on a lot of shit, man. I'm 6 weeks into seeing a personal trainer 3 times a week.
You look great.
Thank you, baby.
Yeah, bro. All you trumpet players getting in shape right now?
Yeah, you know, like you got a lot of model trumpet players out there, and it's like sometimes it feels like that's the only way to get those gigs is. Well, first of all, you should be taking care of yourself. You should want to look and feel your best. But that's been a big thing. Also bringing on Charlie and Bartek into my social media content world to help me keep the gears turning and all this stuff. and they're helping me and motivating me to do more ideas like this, like a podcast style thing, and helping me engineer like solo content. But yeah, man, at the moment, really just like physical health and feeling good is like my number one priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like my schedule is kind of, it's like on autoplay right now. I have complete faith, like the wheels are continuing to move. There will, things aren't going to dry up. I'm very happy where I'm at. I'm working as much as I want, and any more would be stressful. So I'm happy.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah. Think about like how you got there, how to maintain that, as that's a sweet spot. You know, like a lot of people are either working too much or not enough.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing either one of those things, like it's really hard to make music. It's hard to make records, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know, or like you really have to like bust your ass a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I think. And like nobody should have to do that. You know,
nobody should have to bust their ass too hard.
No, it's that like you shouldn't have to like fight so hard to carve out space to be creative when you have already made the decision that like I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to be an artist. So you're already sacrificing so much. You're already doing things like in an atypical way, taking a lot of risks, putting yourself out there, eschewing the comfortable 9-to-5, you know, rat race. So, you know, what are you gonna do that just to do a different version of the rat race, or like, you know, be stretched so thin that like, you know, you really can't afford to like invest in, you know, whatever you need to invest in to make a record or to make your music happen.
Yeah, man. It's a crazy balance, and I feel like everybody has their own path of learning to juggle all these things. Some people are born into money and they don't really have to think about money or debt or anything. What is there, an earthquake?
Kinda, yeah. They're still doing the construction. I thought we'd be done with it.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, for some people, money comes easy. Other people, music comes easy. But we all learn it at different times. And the past few years for me, I've been working harder and more often than I ever have. And a lot of travel and all this stuff. And now I'm learning, you know what, actually, I feel the best when I have like enough free time to invest into myself. Whether that's physically or creatively or just socially or whatever.
I would love to hear, I feel this way about a lot of musicians that I'm close with, but like, I wish there was more of you available for me to ingest, to experience. Like if I want to listen to Curtis Mayfield, like I feel like there's enough Curtis Mayfield out there, like Isaac Hayes, like Prince is a great example. Frank Zappa is a great example, maybe the greatest example of like, he was so in a way generous with his art, where there's like so much Zappa, and Miles is like this too. And I don't think any of these people, like, I don't think Miles was sitting there being like, oh, I want to give a gift to the world of what's in my imagination. And like that motherfucker, like, definitely was not on that wavelength. But the result is like, you have a wide breadth of music with a capital M, to whether it's like Miles as a sideman, you know, like, I can experience him. I can feel all the things that Miles makes you feel, that like Zappa's music makes you feel, that Prince's music makes you feel. You know, these prolific artists. Having a label helps. Yes, but like, man, I get nervous because there's people like you, people like Nadav Nirenberg, like Frank Cohen, people like, you know, even like our boy Ivan, who's like had like great commercial success, but like, you know, these are people who's playing that I know really intimately, that I've performed with, and I look at the body of work, like when I'm sitting at home, and I was like, God, I wish I could listen to Frank like play trombone in the way that I wish there was like
more of that.
Yeah, and there's so many people and bands that I feel that way about, that I think about in 20, 30 years from now, like, it's going to be really sad to, I mean, and most of all, I think about this a little bit for myself, maybe not most of all, but like, I a lot think about this for myself too, is like, you know, what is like the story that I'm leaving behind, not even leaving behind, but that like I'm giving in the present, right? Like if you, I feel like there's beautiful music inside of me.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's beautiful music inside of you and inside of, you know, people and ensembles. And when these people, when these artists have to spend a majority of their time, you know, worried about making a living, whether that's like going to a certain kind of gig or like learning a bunch of cover songs, right? You know, how much time and space is left for all the actual voices that these people have? And when it's all said and done, I don't want it to be a thing where like, you had to be there.
Of course not. And you know what? Like, this day and age, it's never been cheaper and easier to document shit.
Isn't that wild, though?
It is wild. But I think it's just this perfectionist mentality that everyone kind of has. They're like, oh, the only way I can actually document what I'm doing is by paying a band to record an album, get everyone in the studio, put out like $5,000 to $10,000. It becomes this huge undertaking, instead of like, you know what, we have magic right here, and we have a phone that's probably low battery right now, and you know, and we have all this shit, and we don't have to be perfectionists about it. We can capture the moment, the magic in the moment. And that's what I'm trying to do with, you know, having people come out to shows with a camera, with an iPhone, with whatever. Just document the shit that's happening, and then also create these opportunities to do exactly that. Like, capture some real shit, capture what you do at your best in the moment, and finding a way that we can all make this feasible for everybody.
I'm talking about taking it one step further than that, even though, and like building a catalog, whatever that means to you. But I think about the artists that I love and their catalogs. Like Clifford Brown is like such a great example of somebody where I'm like, I wish we had more Clifford Brown.
But isn't it amazing that we have so much? I mean, like, Booker Little was on the same wavelength, but had a lot less recordings of him.
There's no reason that you should be with like everything you just said. Like, we have access to all these things. It's never been easier. So it's almost like doubly disappointing and frustrating when you see like what people are doing with it. Like, I'm not saying like don't like make social media content or don't document things or whatever, but it's like, you know, I don't want to be perceived as a collection of clips or even a like this potpourri of highlights.
Sure.
Right? Like, I feel like a musician is such a multifaceted being that like there needs to be chapters to people's stories, and people need to have the time and space to write those chapters instead of like making little journal entries as best they can, you know, because they're on the grind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think no matter what the media is that you're doing, the medium, there's a way to put yourself in there in a genuine way to hit that art form. I do feel like, you know, a 1-minute clip can be an art form, just like Charles Schultz doing Peanuts comics.
Sure.
Like
that's
that
a great analogy.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to just be like, hey, look at me, I'm doing this on screen with my trumpet. That's the stuff I'm like, no, I'm tuning out. I don't want to watch that. It's when people are actually like saying something with their instrument or whatever. And that can just be, there's so many outlets nowadays. It's not just making an album. It's not just making a YouTube video.
How important is like recorded music? You know what I mean? Like any form of like recorded music, is that even relevant, or does it have to be music plus video or music plus gimmick, music plus wellness, right? I feel like people, like audiences, aren't really able to like just consume music. Like I don't know a lot of people that like just listen to music, right? Like,
no, it's far and few between.
Like without a screen in front of them?
Right. I mean, I listen to the most music when I'm driving. And then I'll find a track that I like and I'll say, play radio station of this track. And then it'll give me more stuff that I probably like.
Right.
But yeah, people who just sit and listen to music and don't do anything else, I feel like that's rare, more rare.
It's like, what do we give to people? You know, like the chef and I think about like chefs on like Navy ships and stuff like that. Like there's like one dude feeding the boat, you know? So like, what a crazy choice. Like these people are going to eat what I tell them to eat.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in a similar boat as musicians, where it's like, so I think we can take a little bit more autonomy over that. I feel like we're all out here like chasing shit when we should be like, nah, like this is what's cool, like this is what's dope. Like no, like I'm the authority on like this is what's funky, or like this is what dope music is. This is what cool is.
Yeah, you got to prioritize your taste and what you actually want to be doing. Like if a jazz brunch gig came up this afternoon and for $150, I would be like, no, sorry, I'm meeting with Ray today. Because this fucking matters. The other thing, I'm gonna get some waffles and play some Misty and St. Thomas, whatever.
You're gonna operate machinery.
Yeah, it might be fun, might be a cool hang and stuff, but at a certain point, you really do need to prioritize the important shit, and that only comes from you. No one else is gonna tell you what you need to prioritize. If that's going for a jog, then that's going for a jog.
It comes from you if you bring it forward.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people are like along for the ride a little bit, or it's like, tell me what to play, you know.
Yeah.
Tell me how to play. And you gotta play some shit where it's like it's right. It's the right shit. And this is kind of the trick as a bass player too, like playing some shit where it's like that's the right shit, because people freak out when they're uncomfortable with what's happening in bass world. Like people freak out, you know, they really do. You know, but like, oh, that's really interesting and killing and like not what I expected to happen, but that's exactly what needs to happen. And that's way more fun, I think. Like I really enjoy like freaking people out, only for them to come around and be like, oh, like I get it. You know, it doesn't require explanation, but it does require listening.
Freaking them out musically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
that's your whole. That's not your whole thing, but that's your thing.
Well, it's like
throwing people curveballs because you're just a little more authentic than people are prepared for.
It's not a traditional curveball. Like, you know, what I'll say about that is like, the whole reason it's a curveball is because it doesn't look like a curveball, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool to sort of appear. It's almost like a boxer where it's like, you know, like you think it's gonna be a left, but he's throwing the right, but it really was a left the whole time. You know, where it's. Yeah, there's steps to it, and I've taken a lot of pride in just at the very least, like not doing the boring thing and not doing the thing that's like everybody knows is about to happen. You know, but it's tricky because you can't be totally fucking wild either. It can't just be total chaos. Like there has to be some kind
logic.
Or something for people to like grasp or hold on to. You know, you can't just be like. There's a difference between being chaotic and being destructive. Like, but you could be chaotic and constructive, and build things, and you know, I think then you end up with stuff that's really beautiful.